Hello everyone, it is Joe here from OmniPoke, the channel that brings you guys everything Pokemon. If you're looking for PTCGO codes, including the stuff from Rebel Clash, go ahead and check out the Potown store. You can get a 5% discount on your orders using the code OmniPoke. For today's video, I'm going to be going over the cards from Eruption Walker. I recently did the Infinity Zone stuff, but realized that I hadn't done this one for some reason. So yeah, we'll be going over this because I'm starting to prepare with Jack the Darkness Ablaze stuff. So it makes sense that we go over these cards. This is a much smaller set than Darkness Ablaze, and I will be jumping to the bottom, as always, to go over the trainer cards first. I believe they are usually the most impactful and most universal, and can give us good scope for the cards, the Pokemon that we'll see in the set later on. So we will start with Dubious Canned Goods. It has interesting artwork and not so interesting of an effect. You heal 80 from one of your Pokemon with a Psychic Energy attached, and then discard a Psychic from that Pokemon. So essentially it's a slightly buffed version of Super Potion, a card which sees no play, and it means that, well, it can only be used to stuff with Psychic Energy attached. Obviously Malamar is rotating by the time this card is out, and also Dragapult is challenged heavily by Eternatus. So I'm not really sure there's much of a home for a card like Dubious Canned Goods, and even if there was a home, it's not the strongest of effects. Next up we have Lookalike Bell. Search your deck for a Pokemon with the same name as a Pokemon in your discard pile, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle your deck. Very interesting type of ball search. You already have had to have found a card that you wanted and binned it and sort of not needed it at the time to then get activation of this card. I think exactly this goes in the Mad Party archetype that's coming out in this set, and we'll talk about that later on. So it's obviously a card that will go in that deck exactly, but for the more general archetype, I think usually immediate ball search is way stronger than this because it doesn't have those annoying stipulations. So I think it's overall a pretty weak card outside of the Mad Party archetypes. We have Old Computer. You flip 2 coins. If both are heads, you choose a card from your discard pile, reveal it, and put it into your hand. Obviously terrible. We have Big Parasol, much more promising card. It's a tool that says as long as the Pokemon this card is attached to is your active Pokemon, prevent all effects of your opponent's attacks except damage done to all of your Pokemon. Existing effects are not removed. So I think this is a stunning card, to be honest. It reminds me of Unknown Guard from back in the day. Good old Unknown G from the Diamond and Pearl era. That card saw a huge amount of play. A Parasol in the active position can protect around things like Dragapult's damage counter placement. It can stop a bunch of annoying other effects out there as well. So similar to Stealthy Hood, where initially I didn't rate that card too high, but then Stealthy Hood found its niches, where it was just like good at shutting enough things off that it was worth a space in decks at times in the format. I believe Big Parasol will be very similar to that. Now we do have a decent number of good tools right now. We have the Big Charm, we have that new cape coming out, we have Vitality Band, so there is some competition here. But Big Parasol, I can see it being a useful tool for sure, because Unknown G saw a silly amount of play. Do bear in mind, of course, that this can be sort of mitigated or negated by Boss's Orders or Fiones, that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's only their attacks, right? So it's not their abilities. Next up we have Kaboo, a supporter that says shuffle your hand into your deck and draw 4. If you only have 1 Pokemon in play, draw 8 instead. So as an early game supporter, it's probably not great, right? Because there are times where it's better for you to just bench additional things a lot, and drawing 4 is always very, very poor for you. So yeah, even as an early game supporter, like the ideal time to play this is right turn 1 going second to get that payoff of drawing 8 cards. But yeah, it's not a payoff. It's like just a lily, basically, but you weren't allowed to put down cards beforehand. So yeah, Kaboo is really, really poor. We have Pokemon Breeders Nurturing. You get to choose up to 2 of your Pokemon in play. Search your deck for a card that evolves from each of those Pokemon and put it on top of that Pokemon to evolve it, then shuffle your deck. So this is a supporter version of Timeable, basically flipping 2 heads, or the combination of 2 Evo Sodas wrapped into 1 into a supporter form. It really reminds me of, I believe the supporter was called Olivia from Burning Shadows, I think it was. Saw absolutely no play. Olivia was obviously specific to GX Pokemon. This is a slightly different stipulation. There are some successful evolving Pokemon in the game right now, but probably not enough to ever let this card be that useful. I believe usually for evolution stuff, you're going to be better served just doing straight up Bull Search, like I mentioned with those Evo Incense that we have, possibly Pokecoms, just so you can get the early game basics down, and then look to things like Rosa and other supporters, so I believe this is also not the best. Glimwood Tangle is a stadium that says once during each player's turn, after they flip coins for an attack, that player may ignore the results and reflip. So it's Victory Star Victini's ability, but on a stadium. Honestly, I don't think there are that many impactful coin flip Pokemon attackers out there right now. I think there's the Dreadnought VMAX that has a pretty impactful coin flip because it's 80 damage, and getting that off is a big deal. Like, there's a big difference between 160 and 240 in the game right now. But do I think that's going to push Dreadnought to be excellent? Probably not, to be honest. There are a couple other attackers that we'll talk about in the video that are also coin flip based, but this always seems like a gimmick to me. We have Heat Fire Energy. It's a special energy that provides 1 fire energy, and when it's attached to a fire Pokemon, you get a maximum hit point increase of 20. And that's stackable by the looks of things as well, so you could possibly make a pretty tanky fire type. Interesting for potentially Cinderace VMAX. Also interesting for the new Centiskorch VMAX. Also could be used in the new Houndoom archetype, which also looks to be interesting. You can try and combine this with potentially the new Champion's Cape and have quite a tanky basic fire Pokemon. Obviously, this competes with the number of regular fire energy you need to play in your deck, because basically every fire deck you want to play wants to have Welder Synergy. And we do lose Fiery Flint through rotation, but we do still have Giant Hearth. So I imagine for the most part, it's going to be competing with a lot of basic fire energy in the list. So if ever this does see play, it's basically just going to be like a 1 or 2 count in fire decks if they are going to be successful at all. The fact that they can be attached to non-fire Pokemon, those special energies, gives me some hope that that card will see a little bit of play, because health buff is just good in general. Alright, so we move on to the Pokemon. There aren't a huge amount that really stood out to me. I believe Infinity Zone was a larger set, but also more impactful in general. We do have a Butterfree V, as well as a Butterfree VMAX. The basic is 190 hit points. For a grass, you can Poison and Confuse, and for grass colorless, you do 130, unimpactful for sure. The VMAX is 300 hit points, which is a weird thing to say, but I'm going to say it. That's a low number. And you have 2 grass and a colorless again. For that attack cost, you do 150, and it's Poison and Confusion. Yes, we have good ways to accelerate grass, but I'm not seeing much reason to play this card. The damage output's not good. It has fire weakness. Free retreat is pretty much the only good stat on that card overall. We move down to... I'm not missing any Mad Party Pokemon, right? That's something I need to look out for. The text Mad Party is what we're trying to keep an eye out for here, as we skip past a lot of stuff. There is an interesting Gliscopod. It feels like most Gliscopods are being treated well in the Pokemon TCG. It's a 130 hit point stage 1 Pokemon that has the Adversity Slash attack. For 2 colorless, you do 30 and 50 more for each of your opponent's Pokemon V and Pokemon GX in play. Reminds me of the Evil Admonition Weavile, but a combination of GX and V Pokemon is a lot of the board, a lot of the time. Obviously, we have Twin Energy, which can potentially make this pretty cheap and easy to get going. So I think this could be a potentially very powerful attacker, especially because I'm expecting Eternatus VMAX to flood its board with a number of itself as well as Crobats, and that's going to really ramp up this Adversity Slash damage output. So I believe that could be an interesting attacker. We haven't seen many like Stage 1 Toolbox tech decks sort of make it to the forefront yet, so I'm not sure if Gliscopod needs a few friends before he starts becoming a good card, but this is the makings of like a Stage 1 Rush deck if it gets a couple partners, or if some come to light. So yeah, that's pretty interesting for sure. We have a Heatran that does more damage the more damage counters it has on it. This could be a synergistic one prize Pokemon for the Spikemuth Houndoom deck if you really want to. We have a Talonflame that has the ability that can burn stuff when it hits you, but it's a stage 2, so yeah. We have a Centiskorch V and V Max. The Centiskorch V has 210 hit points, Sweet to Water, a retreat cost of 3. It has Burning Emissions as its first attack. For 1 fire, you may discard an energy from this guy. If you do, you can choose an energy attached to your opponent's active and also do the same. Energy removal, yeah, sometimes a little bit annoying, but by the looks of things, you're typically wanting to keep energies on this guy based on the VMAX. We have the Burning Train, which has 180 for 4, which is pretty expensive even with welder support. But the VMAX has 320 hit points, so like I said, it can be buffed even further with special energies potentially. And it has the G-Max Centinferno for 2 colorless. You do 40 and 40 more for each fire attached to this Pokemon. You may attach a fire energy from your discard pile to this Pokemon after calculating damage for this attack. So it's a relatively self-sustaining attacker that scales when it's not one-shot. And with 320 plus hit points, it's not going to be one-shot by a huge amount of things. So I believe this card to be pretty powerful. I think it's probably better than Cinderace because it's much more proactive and its damage scales very dangerously. For the requisite 2, you're just doing 120. 2 for 120 is like not that bad. It gets you in the game. So if you've low rolled the entire game, 2 for like the entire first 2 turns of the game, you've whiffed welder, you've done nothing really, you're still doing 120 for 2, which is like reasonable, and then you're getting probably an extra attachment onto yourself. You can take a hit, you'll be at 3 energies, then you can welder attach, be at 6 energies, and you're doing a pretty decent chunk. So yeah, this Centiskorch VMAX seems pretty powerful to me, actually. I think it's one of the most promising VMAXs we've seen in this set. I think it's this guy and Eternatus are probably my top VMAXs. I think this guy is probably very decent. Water Weakness, potentially a little bit awkward, because post-rotation, maybe Frostmoth's a little bit stronger. With potentially things like Pikarom declining in play, with Electropower, Volkner, and Mountain going. So Water sort of repositions itself potentially, and if Centiskorch is a big enough deck, that could be a concern. But that's all kind of speculative. The card in a vacuum is pretty strong, I would say. We have a Galarian Mr. Rhyme, which has the ability Shuffle Dance. Once during a turn, you may choose one of your opponent's face-down prize cards and switch it with the top card of their deck. So Jirachi Prism's rotating, so there's no real reason to have that Shuffle Dance. We have Milotic, which can, once during a turn, heal 20 from each of your Pokemon. That's very, very good healing. And that's stackable healing as well. So if you want to fill your board with Milotics and just clear your board of a bunch of damage, it's like okay, but it's still a lot of setup to do, and I don't really know what wants to have that sort of spread heal effect. There's not too much spread archetypes at the moment, so it's a good card to like pick up for the binder just to have some counter to spreading stuff, to keep that in check for the most part. We have a Vikavolt V. It's a 210 hit point lightning type that has the paralyzing bolt attack that have got a lot of people talking. For a lightning colorless, you do 50, and your opponent can't play any item cards from their hand during that next turn. So it's Quaking Punch with a little bit more damage thrown in. It's on basic, it's 2 energy, but we do still have Tapu Koko Prism Star, even if we do lose the Mountain. So you can have some decent acceleration for this card. Obviously, you're immune to like hammers and stuff because you're crushing, well, you're stopping Crushing Hammer and stuff with the item disruption. Item disruption is pretty good in the game right now. A lot of archetypes are playing quad switch. They're also playing high ball search counts. So I can see this being quite the disruptive attack for sure, especially when we have things like Galamine, Boss's Orders, and stuff like that in the format. I really do think this can be a headache. Even things like the most powerful hand disruption in the game is Reset Stamp, and that's an item. So that's going to be pretty powerful for Vikavolt trapping things and paralyzing stuff to, well, using Paralyzing Volt to victory a lot of the time. Its damage output is very low. Now, Quaking Punch has found a way in Expanded to keep up, but that's always used modifiers to help it It's used things like Laser Bank. It's used bats. Potentially Vikavolt could go alongside things like Obstagoon as bench sitters to increase damage output, or potential other damage mods. Obviously we lose those E-powers, so you can't scale too insane. But I do think this attack is going to be built around, even with all of the cards that are going from the Lightning archetype post-rotation. So yeah, I think there's some consistency there because you already have things like Boltund as a late game sweep card. You have Speed Lightning Energy as well. You're probably just going to be like an all basic Lightning toolbox kind of thing. Possibly a push away from Pikarom, and then you're just playing like a bunch of 2-prize stuff. That's something I can potentially foresee. This also has the Super Zap Cannon, which does 190 and discards 2. 190 is like a really good number for you to just boss something up and close out the game on the last 2 prizes. So I imagine a lot of the time this is going to be looking to trap things, and yeah, that could be really awkward. Obviously, bear in mind we do have Malolana, and that's like a decent card in the format, so potentially that's one of the things that keeps this sort of archetype at bay right now. But even then, just doing item lock and spamming Marnie in like the early turns can really punish a lot of decks. So I expect Vikavolt to be built around for sure. Not certain it will be tier 1 though. I need to see how relevant. Well, how many decks can continue to function under item lock is really the thing that we need to establish. We have Toxicity. It's a stage 1 that has an attack for 2 colorless energy called Risk Taker. Flip a coin. If heads, discard 5 cards from the top of your opponent's deck. If tails, discard the top 5 cards from your deck. So this is probably the most impactful coin flip card that we have that can take advantage of the new Stadium card. But this is going to be really clunky, man. I mean, we have triple accelerations and we have twin energies to fulfill this attack cost. Obviously, we could also play lightning energies and Coco if we really wanted to. But it is an all-colorless attacker, so you can try and use those for the requisites. You also always need to have a Stadium in play. That can be punished by things like Celtic Swell, which means you need to play things like the little baby Marshadow, maybe a couple copies of that. You also need to continually have a chain of the stage 1s. This really reminds me of the Palisand kind of mill thing that they had with the Cursed Shovel in the previous set, and it really didn't do anything compared to just straight Belelba discard stuff. So I believe this will have a similar effect. Discarding 5 is powerful, and obviously you can also try and put Cursed Shovels on this guy, especially because it can help protect your twin energies. One thing I will say is obviously Oranguru is rotating, as well as a lot of controlling pieces. So potentially the most aggressive mill possible will be this sort of archetype. I believe it will probably be quite rogue though, but maybe the only way that mill can survive with the loss of Oranguru. We have Gramble not doing much. We have a Gardevoir V and V Max. Now, this card has to be absolutely excellent because it is weak to metal, so something to say out the gate. I do believe Zacian will continue to be pretty prevalent, even post-rotation, of course. It doesn't lose that much. We have Magical Shot, which is a Psychic for 30. This is a Psychic type, obviously. And we have Psychic Colorless, Overflowing Wave, 120 and 80 more if you healed any damage from this Pokemon during your turn. So this is trying to work off of potentially the new Milotic, potentially that new Canned Goods or whatever it's called. But the payoff isn't that good. Like 200 is actually not great damage. You're out of range of a lot of V Pokemon. You're going to need the help of Zigzagoons or Vitality Band and stuff to actually make that push a lot of the time. And you're two-shotting VMAXs regardless, so that damage output is actually not great. The only sort of good reason, or the only real reason it's good, is that it can knock out Dedenne, Crobat, and Eldegoss. But yeah, it's not the easiest stipulation to get around, and also it's an expensive attack because we don't have the same acceleration that Psychic used to post-rotation. The VMAX has 320 hit points and has that max cure attack for Psychic Colorless again. You can do 180 and heal 50 from this Pokemon. I think that attack is pretty decent, actually. Like I said, that 180 number is kind of the benchmark we're looking for two-shotting stuff, and it can still reach that number of knocking out Dedennes and Eldegoss at least. I think you're 10 off the Crobat, but we can have damage mods if we really need to. The fact that you are weak to metal really puts me off this in general, though. That heal of 50, in addition to those canned goods or whatever they are, in addition to Malolanas, could be potentially an annoying tank for sure. But I do think overall it's probably going to be too expensive of an attacker. One thing to note is that all VMAXs get potential acceleration from the Rose supporter, I think it's called. Yeah, Rose, who can attach 2 to a VMAX and then you discard your hand, right? So that is something to note for all of the VMAXs that we've talked about so far. But Center Scorch has better acceleration. Butterfree is still bad, but this might try and use Rose for acceleration. Who knows? We have some other pretty bad stuff. Do we have our first night Mad Party guy yet? Yeah, okay. So Dedenne is a Mad Partier. It is a 70 hit point Psychic Basic that has for a Psychic 2 colorless 20 and 20 times each of your Pokemon with a Mad Party attack in your discard pile. So this is just a card that you need to bear in mind because you will play 4 copies of it if you're playing Mad Party because it increases your damage output. Let me know if I've missed any up till now. But here we have the engine of the Mad Party deck. It's a Poltegeist. It has the T-Break ability. Once during a turn, you may discard a Pokemon with Mad Party, or that attack, from your hand, and you draw 2 cards. So it's basically a trade, but it has to be exactly for Mad Partiers. And it also has the attack Mad Party. For 2 colors, you do 20 times the amount of Pokemon you have in the discard pile with Mad Party. So I'm hoping I haven't missed any so far. I'm going to have a quick look back through so we can keep a count right now of Mad Partiers that we can bin off. I'm pretty sure I haven't missed any. And I don't think there's any from... Oh, so, okay, the Galarian Mr. Rhyme is actually important for its Mad Party. Okay, so that's something to bear in mind. So yeah, that makes 12 Mad Partiers. Again, it's a water and 2 colorless, so we need to... we probably won't be attacking with that guy. Okay, so yeah, we're at 12 Mad Partiers so far, which is not the best damage output just yet. Yeah, okay. I'm glad I went all the way back up, because otherwise I'd be skewing my math completely right now. So we'll keep a lookout for some more Mad Partiers, because I still think, even with this draw engine, this is you putting like 1 or 2 Poltergeist into play during the game, and then those are things that can't be in your discard pile unless they get knocked out. So you're like removing damage from yourself just to draw cards at times. So it's a bit of a weird interaction. You wouldn't want to put a bunch of them into play, but you would still play 4 copies. Like you'd probably play like 2 Sinistea, 4 Poltegeist, which would be pretty fun. But yeah, if you are playing Mad Party, that's the draw engine of the deck, I guess. So let's see what else is here. Not too much interesting here, the stage 2s. We've got a Grapploct V, a 210 hit point fighting type basic that has Bind Up. It's 1 for 20, and if the defending Pokemon is a basic, it can't attack during your opponent's next turn. Obviously, they can reset that with switches and all that sort of stuff, so not a big deal. And also we have the Moonsault Press. For fighting colorless, you do 120, flip a coin. If heads, 100 more damage, another coin flip card. But I think overall this is purely outclassed by Sandaconda. So, yeah, pretty poor. Fighting is actually a really good type going into the next format because of Eternatus, and you hit Crobat for weakness as well for easy prizes on Gust. So fighting is certainly something to bear in mind, but just not the Grapploct, I'm afraid. We have a Muck not doing much. We have a Darkrai, which is a basic that can reduce 20 damage coming into it when it's got a Dark attached, and you do 60 and 20 more for each Dark attached to your Darkrai. But yeah, still a little bit below the bar. So yeah, we have an Aggron. It's a stage 2 that has that same sturdy ability as an old Domfan. If it's at full hit points and would be knocked out, it becomes 10 hit points left instead. But yeah, this is in a format where Zigzagoon Scoop Up Net is being played in a lot of stuff, and there's all sorts of other damage counter placements, so I don't think Sturdy is that relevant of an ability. Not enough to make it a relevant card, definitely, especially because its attacks are super expensive as always. Excavalier has Fury Cutter, more coin flip attacks. So yeah, not too relevant there. We have a Galarian Stunfisk V. It's a Metal type 200 hit point basic that has the ability Metal Skin. This Pokemon's max hit points are increased by 20 for each Metal Energy attached to it. So this is potentially a very, very tanky card if you commit to it like over the top, which could be quite interesting. Again, we have that cape that you could try and put on this guy as well. Unfortunately, we are losing Frying Pan to rotation, but you at least keep Goggles. I think if you are going to try and make a tank, you don't want to be Fire Weak. So that's something to bear in mind as we go through this. But for 2 colors, you have Trap Bite. You do 60. If this Pokemon is damaged by an attack during your opponent's next turn, put 12 counters on the attacking Pokemon. So it's like you put a giant bomb on yourself naturally, and you're going to be very, very tanky with the amount of hit points that you have. So potentially just this sort of Trap Bite, sit and heal kind of deck is going to be born. It's probably better than Cinderace VMAX if you are trying to do the sort of passive poke, 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 you gotta hit me at some point kind of deal. Because these are both equally like passive, not doing much and just hoping that people are falling into your Trap Bite basically. And because this is a basic and has Sorcerer available, it's probably easier to set up and continue, and you can do it earlier on in the game than Cinderace, so probably better than that. Even though it's less tanky out the gate, you can try and commit to it with a lot of attachments and with that cape that I keep mentioning that's the extra hit point buff of 50. It's like a really impactful hit point increase. So yeah, this card's going to be pretty chunky. It's really, really slow though, and I think for the most part, this isn't really worth teching into something like Zacian. So they'll kind of be separate decks. Potentially something like a Stunfisk, Zamazenta sort of stalling, walling deck is going to be a thing. Kind of like an aggressive stall archetype where you're prodding away at them the entire time and making life awkward for them, but you're also just packed up the wazoo with a bunch of heal and slowing down cards at the same time. Maybe that's worth exploring. We have this stuff. Okay, so we also have this Bunnelby. So this Bunnelby is also a Mad Party dude. For 2 colors, you do 20 times once again. So that means that we have so far 16 Mad Partiers we can have in our deck, which is getting to pretty high echelons, especially because it's a 1 attachment, twin energy kind of card. So now we're getting somewhere. It's just at that point, you're filling your deck with a lot of Pokemon, and you don't actually have that many attackers, right? It was only the Poltegeist and the Bunnelby which attack for just that twin energy attachment, and the other ones attack for more than that, which is a little bit awkward as long as I'm not wrong about this. But yeah, so it looks like Bunnelby is the main attacking presence of the Mad Party deck, with some interesting artwork there for sure. We've been looking for another non-GX kind of wall breaker for a while. I'm not sure if we have enough discard synergy. You'd probably have to play a high Dedenne count. You'd definitely play 4 Research. You play 4 Quick Ball. We lose Acrobike, which is a real big miss. So just accumulating these cards into your hand is going to be the biggest challenge. It's like 4 Quick Ball. You probably have to play 4 Great Ball. You probably have to play possibly even like Pokénav or something like that. Does Pokénav even stay in the format? I don't think it does. So yeah, it's going to be a challenge to get a whole heap of cards into your hand to then yeet into the bin straight away. Do not confuse this for the classic Night March, because you had Battle Compressor in those days, so it was very easy to scale quickly. Now you need to open hand a lot of Mad Partiers and a Research or a Dedenne and go from there. So I don't think it's going to be insane, just my initial impressions, but it could be a reasonable non-GX deck, I guess. The hit points on some of this stuff, though: 40 hit points of Bunnelby, 30 hit points on Sinistea, and only 60 on the Poltegeist. Ugh, that's rough. You can be countered pretty hard by certain archetypes, so yeah, even just like, man, just Zigzagoon Scoop Up Net or Obstagoon as a tech card in Eternatus. If you just play like a few Candies and a few Obstagoons, you just instantly beat the Mad Party deck. So yeah, gonna be more like a Lost March than a Night March, I would say, if you get my drift in terms of where I'm going to place it on a tier list. Finally, we have this Corviknight. It's a 160 hit point stage 2 with a flying taxi ability. Once during your turn, when you play this card from your hand to evolve, you may choose one of your Pokemon, excluding Corviknight, and return that Pokemon and all cards attached to it to your hand. So it's like a sort of bouncing mechanic. You're setting up a stage 2 to then bounce something else up. Okay. It is... So, for VMAXs and stuff, it's a way of healing to full. It's annoying for VMAXs, though, because you have to put them back down and then they're vulnerable as just their regular Vs. Could be a way of denying prize cards. Could be a way of resetting abilities. What abilities would we want to reset? I'm not thinking of that many. So yeah, this is probably too clunky right now to be a reasonable ability, but it's a roundabout way of healing stuff, which could be interesting. But it would have to be an efficient attacker, like a 1 or 2 energy attacker, in order to really use Corviknight very well. So it seems a little bit niche to me overall. So yeah, as I said, I don't think this mini set is anywhere near as strong as Infinity Zone stuff. I think the Special Fire Energy is good. I think Parasol's good. Lookalike... Okay, so we have Lookalike Bell and Quick Ball, and probably like Great Ball as our search options for the Mad Party deck. Yeah, that's a good amount of search, actually. Okay, I think Mad Party is going to struggle with its hit points for sure. Like, it's just like Night March, basically, in that regard. But it does have a good amount of ball search. Maybe its damage output can get there. We'll have to see on that. It might need some other accelerators. Maybe this plays Tapu Koko and Prism Star and like 4 Twin, 4 Lightning Energy, something like that. We'll see. Stunfisk seems okay, but I don't think it goes in like mainstream metal decks that we know already, basically. So yeah, the Mad Party is like the new sort of gimmick from this set. The Gardevoir struggles with its weakness, but its attack is decent. Vikavolt seems very annoying, and it's pretty much a really annoying foil to the Mad Party deck as well, just because it's one-shotting everything, basically, just at that 50 base damage, and is stopping them playing the game. Toxicity, a potential new mill gimmick, but it's pretty much the same as Palisand, maybe a little bit more aggressive. We have Centiskorch, which seems to be another decent fire-type VMAX. This is at least competing with Cinderace. So, yeah. We have Gliscopod, which is a stage 1 in waiting, basically. I don't believe this will be a great card as it first comes onto the scene, unless Eternatus is, like, by far the most played deck. If it's just, like, one of the decks in the format, I think Gliscopod won't really see play, but if Eternatus is played enough, that card becomes like a big tech card in the game and something to keep it in check at least. Alright guys, that is my first impressions. Let me know your favourite card from this mini set. I'm going to start preparing for Darkness Ablaze because it's creeping up on us pretty quickly. I can't believe it's been this long. There's going to be the rotation discussion as well coming soon, so plenty of things I'm working on in the background, and I'm also going to be getting some recent deck profiles up as well, so stay tuned on the channel. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in another video tomorrow. Cheers.